My name is Jake, and I'm 32 years old. Up until recently, I thought I had a pretty solid, if not perfect, relationship with my parents. Sure, I always knew they favored my younger brother, Ethan, but I never thought they would take it as far as they did. Ethan has always been the golden child. Growing up, it was obvious. He got away with things I never could, received praise for the bare minimum, and when he messed up, my parents had a million excuses ready for him. He's just young, he's figuring things out. You need to be patient with him, Jake. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the responsible one, the mature one, the one who had to lead by example. And I did. I worked hard in school, got a decent job, and made something of myself. Ethan? Not so much. At 28, he still bounces between jobs, constantly figuring things out. He's lived with my parents rent-free his entire life, yet somehow, they act like he has it so much harder than I ever did. Anytime I tried to point out the double standard, I was met with the same response. Jake, you're independent. You don't need us the way Ethan does. That was their justification for every single thing. If I got a cheap birthday gift while Ethan got the latest gaming console, well, Jake, you have a good salary now. You can buy it yourself. If I had to help out around the house while Ethan lounged on the couch, he's just not as responsible as you. If Ethan wrecked their car and they paid to fix it, but I had to buy my own first car with my own money, you can handle it, Jake. And for years, I swallowed it. I let it go. I told myself it wasn't worth fighting over. Then, I found out about the will. I had been helping my parents financially for years, covering part of their mortgage, paying for home repairs, even chipping in for their medical bills. I never did it expecting anything in return. They were my parents, and I wanted to make sure they were taken care of. But one day, completely by accident, I learned that they had left everything to Ethan. The house, the savings, their belongings, everything. It happened when I was visiting to help them sort out some paperwork. My mom had left a folder on the kitchen table while she stepped away to take a call, and I glanced at it absent-mindedly. That's when I saw my name, or rather, the absence of it. Ethan was listed as the sole inheritor. When my mom came back, I asked about it. I wasn't angry, not yet. I just wanted to understand. But instead of looking guilty or regretful, she acted like it was nothing. Oh, that, she said, waving a hand dismissively. We just figured it made the most sense. You have a good job, a stable life. Ethan, well, he's not as lucky. He's going to need the help more than you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So because I worked hard and built a stable life, I get nothing? Even after everything I've done for you? She frowned at me like I was being unreasonable. You don't need it, Jake. It's just money. You'll be fine. Something in me snapped. For years, I had been their safety net. I had given and given, and the moment I stopped to ask if I mattered at all, I was dismissed like a greedy child throwing a tantrum. I realized, then and there, that in their eyes, I was nothing more than a resource. Someone to rely on when they needed help, but never someone they truly valued. So I made a decision. I stopped paying their bills. I stopped covering their mortgage. I stopped sending them money for groceries or repairs or unexpected expenses. If I didn't matter enough to be included in their will, then surely they didn't need my financial support either. It didn't take long for reality to hit them. At first, they didn't say anything. Maybe they thought I was just busy, or that I had forgotten. But then, about a month later, I got a text from my mom. No greeting, no small talk. Just, the rent is due. That was it. No, how are you? No, hope you're doing well. Just a demand, like I was their personal ATM. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a mix of emotions, anger, hurt, disappointment. Then, finally, I replied. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't beg them to see how unfair they had been. I simply responded with, I'm sure Ethan will handle it. That was all I said. No explanation, no argument, just a simple statement. And then I put my phone down and went about my day. It didn't take long for the backlash to begin. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed again, this time, a call from my mom. I ignored it. Then another. And another. Finally, a text. Jake, answer the phone. This isn't funny. I let it sit. I wasn't in the mood to entertain whatever guilt trip they were about to throw at me. But sure enough, when I finally checked my voicemail later, I got exactly what I expected. Mom's voice was dripping with disappointment. Jake, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is really selfish. Your father and I have always done our best for you. Is this really the kind of son you want to be? Ignoring us when we need you? Ethan can't afford to help right now. He's struggling. We thought you'd understand that. Call me back. I didn't. A few hours passed before I got the next message, this time from my dad. He rarely texted me, so I knew my mom must have gotten him involved. Jake, we need to talk. This is serious. Call your mother. Still, I ignored it. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't before: control. I had spent so long playing the role of the dutiful son, the responsible one, the one who never asked for anything. But the moment I refused to be used, they lost their minds. Then, as I expected, Ethan got involved. Dude, what is wrong with you? Mom and Dad are freaking out. Just pay the rent like you always do. Why are you being so difficult? I almost laughed at that. Like I always do? As if it was my job to keep a roof over their heads. As if the fact that he was their favorite meant that responsibility automatically shifted to me. I finally responded, but I kept it short. Not my problem. The response came within seconds. WTF does that mean? You can literally afford it. Stop being a dick. I set my phone down without replying. It was incredible how quickly the entitlement came out. No, hey, are you okay? No, I didn't realize how much you've been helping. Just immediate anger that I wasn't keeping the ship afloat for them. I expected more texts, maybe a few angry voicemails. But what I didn't expect was what happened next. The next day, I woke up to a message from my aunt, my mom's sister. Hey sweetie, your mom just called me in tears. She says you're refusing to help them and that they're at risk of losing the house? What's going on? I thought you guys were close. I sighed. Of course. The flying monkeys had arrived. I took a deep breath before responding. Hey Aunt Lisa, I appreciate you checking in. I'd love to explain, but I think you should ask Mom why she left me out of the will completely while expecting me to pay their bills. Let me know what she says. There was a long pause before she finally replied. Wait, what? I smirked. That was my cue to step back and watch the fallout begin. Because now, it wasn't just between me and my parents. Now, the rest of the family was about to find out exactly what had been happening behind closed doors. And I had a feeling my parents weren't going to like it. At least it didn't text back right away, and I figured she was either trying to get the full story from my mom or just processing what I'd said. Either way, I wasn't going to chase after her for a response. Instead, I went about my day, enjoying the rare peace that came with not being at my parents' beck and call. But that peace didn't last long. By the afternoon, my phone lit up again. This time, it was my mom. How could you say that to Lisa? This is a family matter, not her business. You're making us look bad. Ah, there it was. Not we're sorry. Let's talk about this. Not I didn't realize how unfair this was to you. Just pure outrage that their actions were now being questioned by someone else. I waited a few minutes before responding. It became her business the moment you dragged her into it. If you don't want people knowing what you did, maybe you shouldn't have done it. That shut her up, at least for the moment. But then Ethan chimed in again. Mom is literally crying right now. Do you feel good about that? Do you feel good about making your own mother cry? I stared at the text, shaking my head. The manipulation was so blatant it was almost funny. Almost. If she's crying, it's because she's realizing that actions have consequences. Not my problem. I sent it, and this time, Ethan didn't respond right away. Maybe he was running back to Mom and Dad, feeding them my words so they could all sit together and fume about how awful I was. Meanwhile, I was starting to realize just how much weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For years, I had been the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who picked up the slack when my parents coddled Ethan and let him skate through life without consequences. And what did I get for it? Nothing. Not even an acknowledgement in their will. I'd sacrificed vacations, nights out, even put off buying a home of my own because I was always helping them out. And they never once appreciated it. I was done. A few hours passed, and then my phone rang again. This time, I answered, because it was Aunt Lisa. Hey, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Hey, Jake, she said, and I could tell from her tone that she was treading carefully. I just got off the phone with your mom. I waited, letting her continue. She told me a very different version of what's going on. I almost laughed. Let me guess, she made it sound like I'm some selfish, greedy son who suddenly decided to abandon them for no reason. There was a pause, and then a quiet sigh. More or less. I leaned back in my chair. Did she mention that I've been covering their bills for years? Or that they left me out of the will entirely while giving Ethan everything? Another pause. No. She left that part out. Of course she did. Well, I said, keeping my tone even, that's what happened. Lisa sighed again. Jake. I had no idea. I really didn't. And honestly, I don't blame you one bit. That surprised me. Really? Of course. Look, I love your mom, she's my sister, but she's always played favorites with Ethan. And I hate to say it, but I think she just assumed you'd always be there to clean up their messes. That you would never say no. Well, I said, she assumed wrong. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she said, so what now? I exhaled slowly. Now? Now they figure it out on their own. I'm done being their safety net. Lisa didn't argue. In fact, she let out a dry little chuckle. Honestly? Good for you. We talked for a few more minutes, and before we hung up, Lisa said something that stuck with me. I have a feeling this isn't over. They're gonna try something. Be careful, Jake. She wasn't wrong. Because later that evening, I got another text from Ethan. Fine. If you want to act like a selfish A, go ahead. Just don't come crawling back when you realize you messed up. I stared at the message for a second before shaking my head. Messed up? I hadn't messed up a single thing. If anything, this was the first time in years that I was finally getting something right. But Ethan's text made one thing very clear: they weren't going to back down that easily. And part of me was almost looking forward to whatever they tried next. The next morning, I woke up to a pounding on my front door. Not a polite knock. Not even an impatient one. This was the kind of pounding that made you think someone was about to break the door down. I already knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. For a second, I debated just ignoring it, letting them stand out there and fume. But something told me that if I didn't answer, they'd just keep banging until the neighbors complained. With a sigh, I opened the door. Sure enough, there stood my parents and Ethan. Mom had her arms crossed, her face pinched with disapproval. Dad, as usual, stood slightly behind her, like he always did when she was in full attack mode. And Ethan, well, Ethan had the same smug, self-satisfied expression he always wore when he thought he was in control of a situation. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Wow, this is unexpected. Mom didn't waste time. Jake, we need to talk. I let out a small chuckle. Oh, now you want to talk? Not when you were writing me out of the will. Not when you were expecting me to keep paying your bills while giving Ethan everything. Now suddenly, it's urgent. Dad sighed like I was being difficult. Son, can we come in? I pretended to think about it, then shook my head. No, I don't think so. We can have this conversation right here. Ethan scoffed. Are you serious? Dead serious. Mom huffed, clearly not used to being denied what she wanted. Jake, you're being childish. Childish? I repeated, raising an eyebrow. That's rich, coming from the people who showed up at my house unannounced, pounding on my door like debt collectors. Mom's face turned red, but she took a deep breath, trying to regain control. Listen, she said, shifting to what I called her guilt trip voice. We know you're upset. We understand that you're feeling left out. But you have to look at this rationally. I actually laughed. Rationally? You want to talk about rationality after what you did? Dad, who had been silent up until now, finally decided to chime in. Son, you're doing well for yourself. You have a good job, a stable life. Ethan, well, he needs more help. I turned to Ethan, who was still standing there, arms crossed like this was all beneath him. He needs more help? I repeated. He's 30 years old. He's not a kid. He's had every advantage handed to him while I had to work for everything I have. And now, after all that, you decided he deserves to inherit everything while I get nothing. Ethan smirked. It's not my fault you didn't fight for it. I stared at him, genuinely stunned by how shameless he was. Fight for it. I repeated, my voice quiet. Fight for what? My own parents' love? My own share of what should have been an equal inheritance. Mom waved a hand dismissively. Oh, stop being dramatic. We just thought it made sense. You don't need the money, Jake. That's not the point, I snapped. It's not about needing the money. It's about fairness. It's about the fact that you used me for years, took my help, took my money, took my time, and then tossed me aside like I was nothing when it came to the one thing that should have been fair. Mom's eyes flashed. Jake, we are your parents. We raised you. The least you could do is show us some respect. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. Respect? You want respect when you've shown me none. Ethan rolled his eyes. God, you're so dramatic. You're seriously throwing a tantrum over this? You're acting like you're some poor, struggling victim. I turned to him, my voice ice cold. You're really one to talk about struggling, huh? When's the last time you had to work a full-time job without mom and dad bailing you out? Oh, wait. You never have. That wiped the smug look off his face. But before he could fire back, Mom cut in again. Enough, she snapped. Then she took a deep breath, smoothing out her features. Look, Jake, this is not how I wanted this conversation to go. But the reality is, you're family. And family takes care of each other. I could practically hear the trap she was setting. Uh-huh, I said, not giving her anything. She sighed, as if this was exhausting for her. The mortgage is due. I tilted my head. And we're a little short this month. I couldn't help it. I actually laughed. Are you serious? After everything you just said, after standing here defending your choices, you're still asking me for money. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. Jake, we're asking you to do the right thing. There it was. The manipulation. The guilt-tripping. The expectation that no matter how badly they treated me, I would still come running when they needed me. I took a deep breath, looked each of them in the eye, and said, "No." Mom flinched like I'd slapped her. "Excuse me." I said, "No." I repeated, my voice steady. "I'm not paying a single cent. Not now, not ever again." Ethan let out a low whistle. "Wow, so that's it, huh? You're just gonna let your own parents lose their home over some petty grudge?" I stared at him. "You live there too, don't you? Maybe you should step up and pay for once in your life." His face darkened. "You're selfish, Jake." Mom, however, wasn't done. "Jake," she said, her voice dangerously low, "do you really want to do this? Do you really want to walk away from your family over money?" I met her gaze without flinching. "That's funny," I said. "Because from where I'm standing, you walked away from me first." She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. "You made your choice. You chose Ethan. You chose to leave me out. Well, now I'm making my choice. And I choose to be done." I stepped back and, without another word, shut the door in their faces. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then I heard Mom's muffled voice through the door. "This isn't over, Jake." I smiled to myself. No, it wasn't. Because something told me they were about to learn just how badly they'd messed up. I didn't expect them to leave right away. My mother wasn't the kind of person to back down when she thought she was owed something. Sure enough, less than a minute after I shut the door, the knocking started again. This time, louder, angrier. "Jake." Mom's voice was shrill, barely muffled through the door. "You're making a huge mistake. You're going to regret this." I leaned against the door, arms crossed, listening to her rant. Dad, ever the quiet follower, muttered something I couldn't quite make out, probably trying to calm her down. But Ethan, ever the golden child, had no such patience. "You're such a selfish piece of garbage, you know that?" he shouted. "All those years we took care of you." That actually made me laugh. I swung the door back open just enough to glare at him. "You took care of me? That's funny, Ethan. Because I seem to remember working 2 jobs in college while you had Mom and Dad paying your rent. I seem to remember lending you money that you never paid back. I seem to remember bailing Mom and Dad out while you sat around doing nothing." His smug expression wavered, but he quickly recovered. "Well, I was the one they trusted with their estate, wasn't I? Maybe you're just mad that you weren't good enough." I clenched my jaw, inhaling sharply. This is what he wanted. He wanted to get under my skin, to make me react, to make me lash out so that I'd be the one looking like the bad guy. I refused to give him that satisfaction. Instead, I simply smiled. "Good luck with that estate, then. I'm sure it'll be real helpful when you're struggling to pay the mortgage next month." I shut the door again. This time, they didn't knock. For a moment, there was silence. Then I heard my mother's voice, lower this time, but still carrying that same venom. "This is not over, Jake." I smirked. "Yes, Mom," I muttered under my breath. "It really is." The next few days went by in a blur of tension. I expected them to try something, maybe send a passive-aggressive text, maybe get my extended family involved. But to my surprise, nothing came. No calls, no emails, no word from anyone. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, but instead, it felt like the world had just shifted. I wasn't constantly on edge anymore. I wasn't hearing my mother's guilt trips or my dad's weak apologies. It was like they had all vanished, and for once, I could breathe freely. Then, 2 weeks later, I came home from work to a small envelope stuck to my front door. It was white, unmarked, with nothing but my name scribbled across the front in familiar handwriting. I tore it open, expecting something passive-aggressive or manipulative, and I wasn't disappointed. "Jake, this is your last chance. You are throwing everything away for pride. Ethan may have been chosen as executor of the estate, but you are still family. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Come to your senses. You'll regret it." No signature, just the same tired threats. I crumpled it up and threw it in the trash without even a second thought. A few more days passed. Then I received another message. This time, it wasn't a letter. It was an email from my mother's address. Jake, I really thought you'd come around. You're the one who always told us family is everything. Now you're turning your back on us. We're struggling. We need you. Ethan's making a mess of things. Please, let's fix this before it's too late. This time, I actually felt a little something, anger. The audacity to make me feel guilty about their mess. To pull that old card about family is everything, when they had chosen Ethan over me from the start. I took a deep breath, then I deleted the email without replying. It was then that I realized something. I wasn't mad anymore. I was just done. And yet, I still hadn't heard from Ethan. He was silent, his arrogance replaced with something more desperate. I had to admit that part of me was surprised. Ethan, the one who had always believed he was untouchable, wasn't making a move. I half expected him to show up at my door with an apology. But he didn't. Then, one afternoon, out of nowhere, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something told me I should pick up. I answered, and sure enough, it was my mother's voice again. Jake, please. She was crying. I could hear it in her voice, and I was taken aback. You need to come over. Ethan's lost the house. He's messing everything up. We have nowhere to go. Please, we need you to help us. For the first time, I felt nothing. No sympathy, no guilt, no obligation. I almost felt a strange sense of relief. This was it. This was what I had been waiting for. Instead of responding immediately, I let the silence linger. I could feel her desperation across the phone, her need for reassurance, for me to step in and clean up Ethan's mess. But I wasn't about to be dragged back into that cycle of manipulation. No, I finally said, my voice calm. This is your problem, Mom. You've always wanted him to be the golden child, and now you get to deal with the consequences of that choice. You chose him to handle everything. You trusted him. You don't get to pull me into your mess now. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, Jake, please. I don't know what else to do. I didn't even flinch. I spoke my next words as coldly as I could. You should have thought of that before you decided I wasn't good enough to be part of the family. I hung up. The phone didn't ring again. For weeks, I didn't hear from anyone. But strangely enough, I felt better. The weight of years of resentment and manipulation had finally been lifted. And then one day, while I was at the store, I saw a familiar face in the parking lot. My father. He was walking toward a beat-up car, carrying some bags. I hadn't seen him in weeks. I debated whether to approach him, but something told me that nothing was left to fix. I just turned away, ignoring the way he called my name. That was the last time I saw him. So here I am, a year later. I haven't heard a single word from my parents or Ethan. Part of me wonders if they're still struggling. Part of me wonders if they ever realized what they did wrong. But honestly, I'm okay. Maybe, for once, it's time for me to take care of me. So, Reddit, what do you think? Did I go too far? Should I have tried to fix things instead of shutting them out? Let me know your thoughts.
My girlfriend said, "You're not invited. My family feels awkward around you." I nodded once. Understood. She got dressed and left smiling. I stayed behind and made one quiet decision. Later that night, the party didn't end the way anyone expected. I'm 36, and I thought I'd learned to read people by now. Apparently, I was wrong. My girlfriend and I had been together for almost 3 years. We met at a mutual friend's wedding, danced twice, exchanged numbers, and somehow ended up building what I thought was a solid relationship. She came from money, not crazy rich, but comfortable. Country club memberships, annual family trips to resorts, that kind of thing. I didn't come from that world, but I never felt like it mattered. Until it did. Her family tolerated me at first. Polite smiles, surface-level questions about my work, comments about how different our backgrounds were said with a laugh that didn't quite reach their eyes. I brushed it off. People have their prejudices. I figured if I kept being myself, they'd come around eventually. They didn't. It was a Wednesday afternoon when she told me about the party. Her parents were hosting their annual holiday gathering at their house. Big event, extended family, family friends, the whole production. She'd mentioned it weeks ago, and I'd assumed I was going. We'd been to plenty of family events together. "So, what time should I be ready on Saturday?" I asked, while we were making dinner. She stopped chopping vegetables. "About that. I looked up from the pasta I was stirring. What? You're not invited. I thought she was joking. Very funny. I'm serious. My family feels awkward around you. My mom specifically asked if I could come alone this year. I turned off the stove. You're serious? Yeah. I'm sorry. I know it's weird, but it's just easier this way. It's one night. You understand, right? No, I don't understand. What does awkward mean? She sighed like I was being difficult. You know, you don't really fit in with them. You don't play golf. You don't know the people they know. You don't get their jokes. They have to explain everything. It's just uncomfortable for everyone. Uncomfortable for them or uncomfortable for you? Don't make this bigger than it is. It's one party. It's your family's holiday party, the one you've been talking about for weeks, and I'm not invited because I don't play golf? That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said. She put down the knife, wiped her hands on a towel. Look, I don't want to fight about this. I already told my mom I'd come alone. It's done. When did you tell her that? Last week. Last week. So you've known for a week and you're just telling me now? I didn't know how to bring it up. How about, hey, my family doesn't want you at their party? That would have been a start. You're being dramatic. I'm being dramatic? Your family doesn't want me around and you think that's fine? It's one night. You can do something else. See your friends. Relax. You're always saying you never have time to yourself. I stared at her. She actually believed what she was saying, that this was reasonable, that I should be grateful for a night off from her family's judgment. Understood, I said finally. She blinked. What? I said understood. You're not inviting me. Message received. Don't be mad. I'm not mad. I'm understanding, like you asked. She studied my face, trying to figure out if I was serious or setting up for a bigger fight. When I didn't say anything else, she seemed relieved. Thank you. I knew you'd get it. It's really not personal. I went back to the pasta. Sure. Saturday came. She got ready in my bathroom, spending over an hour on hair and makeup. I sat in the living room, scrolling through my phone, not really looking at anything. She came out looking good. Red dress, heels, the works. How do I look? She asked. Great. You're sure you're okay with this? I said I understood. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek. I'll text you later. Don't wait up. Then she left. I heard her car start, pull out of the driveway, fade into the distance. I sat there for about 10 minutes. Then I made a decision. I pulled out my laptop and started writing. Everything. Every comment her family had made over the past 3 years. Every time they'd corrected my grammar or explained something I already knew. Every time they'd introduced me as the boyfriend, with a tone that suggested quotation marks. Every passive-aggressive remark about my clothes, my car, my lack of country club membership. Then I wrote about tonight. About being uninvited because I made them uncomfortable. About my girlfriend thinking this was reasonable. I wrote it all in a long, detailed message. And then I sent it to every member of her family whose contact information I had. Her parents, her siblings, her aunt and uncle who were probably at the party right now. The message was simple. I was told I make you uncomfortable, and that's why I wasn't invited tonight. I want you to know that I've always tried to be respectful and kind to all of you. If I've failed at that, I apologize. But I also think you should know that making someone feel unwelcome and then asking their partner to exclude them isn't the kindness you probably think it is. I hope you enjoy your evening. I hit send before I could overthink it. Then I packed a bag, took the spare key she'd given me off my key ring, and left it on the kitchen counter. I drove to my friend's place across town. Update 1. My phone started blowing up around 8:30. First her, then her sister, then her mother. I didn't answer, just watched the notifications pile up. At 9, my friend asked what was going on. I showed him the message I'd sent. Oh man, he said. You nuked it from orbit. Was I wrong? No, but you definitely just ended that relationship. It was already over. I just made it official. Around 10, she started leaving voicemails. I listened to the first one out of curiosity. What the hell did you do? My entire family is upset. My mom is crying. My dad wants to know who you think you are. Call me back right now. I deleted it. Listened to the second one. I'm leaving the party. We need to talk. Where are you? Deleted. Third one. I'm at your place. You're not here. Where are you? Why did you leave your key? I texted back. I'm staying somewhere else tonight. The key is on the counter. I think we both know this is done. She called immediately. I didn't answer. She texted, You don't get to do this. You don't get to blow up my family and then disappear. Me. I didn't blow up anything. I told the truth. If that caused problems, maybe that says something about the truth. Her. You're being childish. Me. I'm being honest. Something you should have been a week ago. Her. We're not breaking up over this. Me. We're not breaking up over this. We're breaking up because you chose your family's comfort over basic respect for me. The message was just me finally saying what I should have said a long time ago. She stopped responding after that. Update 2 Sunday morning, I woke up to a text from her sister. We'd always gotten along reasonably well. Or so I thought. You humiliated our family. Whatever problems you had with us, you should have talked to us privately, not ambushed us at a party. I texted back. I was excluded from that party specifically because talking to your family hasn't worked for 3 years. When was I supposed to do this? During another event where I'm tolerated but not welcomed? Her. You made my mother cry. Me. Your mother told her daughter not to bring me because I make people uncomfortable. Did she think that wouldn't hurt? Her. It's different. Me. How? She didn't respond. My girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, I guess, showed up at my friend's place around noon. I don't know how she found me, but she was persistent. We need to talk, she said when I answered the door. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. You can't just end 3 years like this. You ended it when you uninvited me. I just made it official. I uninvited you from one party. Because your family thinks I'm not good enough for their world, and you agreed with them. I never said that. You didn't have to. You chose them over me. You've been choosing them over me for months, maybe years. I was just too stubborn to see it. She looked genuinely confused. What are you talking about? Every time they made a comment about me, you laughed along. Every time they suggested I didn't fit in, you agreed. You never defended me, not once. And then you uninvited me to their party and expected me to be fine with it. Because I didn't want to fight with them. But you're fine fighting with me. That's not fair. None of this is fair. That's the point. She started crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind. I love you. I don't think you do. I think you love the idea of me. The version of me that doesn't make waves with your family. But that's not who I am. And I'm tired of pretending it is. So that's it? We're done? Yeah, we're done. She left. I watched her car disappear down the street and felt nothing but relief. Update 3. The next few days were quiet. I stayed at my friend's place, went to work, came back. My ex texted a few times, asking if we could talk, if I'd reconsider, if there was any way to fix this. I didn't respond. Then, on Thursday, I got a call from her father. That surprised me. We'd barely spoken in 3 years beyond pleasantries. We need to talk, he said. His voice was different, less dismissive than usual. About what? About what you said. About how we've treated you. I think I said everything I needed to say. I know. And you were right. I wasn't expecting that. What? You were right. We did make you feel unwelcome. And we shouldn't have. My wife and I have been talking about it all week. Your message. It made us look at ourselves. and we didn't like what we saw. I didn't know what to say. I'm not asking you to forgive us, he continued. I'm not even asking you to get back together with my daughter. I just wanted you to know that we heard you, and we're sorry. Okay. That's it? Just okay? I appreciate the apology. I do. But it doesn't change anything. Your daughter chose you over me, and I can't be in a relationship where I'm always going to be second to people who don't respect me. I understand. For what it's worth, she's devastated. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Honestly? I don't know. Part of me is. Part of me thinks she should have thought about that before she uninvited me. He was quiet for a moment. You're a good man. I'm sorry we didn't see that sooner. Thank you. He hung up. Update 4. 2 weeks later, I ran into her at a coffee shop. She looked tired. We made eye contact, and for a second I thought about walking out, but I didn't. Hi, she said. Hi. Can we talk? Just for a minute? Sure. We sat at a corner table. She ordered coffee she didn't drink, just held it between her hands. My dad told me he called you, she said. Yeah. He never apologizes to anyone. That's a big deal. I know. Does it change anything? No. She nodded like she expected that. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how I always chose them over you. And? You were right. I did. I didn't realize I was doing it, but I was. Every time they made a comment, I should have shut it down. Every time they made you feel small, I should have defended you. And I didn't. No, you didn't. I'm sorry. I appreciate that. Is there any chance? No. You didn't even let me finish. I don't need to. The answer is no. Not because I hate you or because I want revenge, but because I finally understand what I deserve. And it's not someone who only fights for me when they've already lost me. Her eyes filled with tears. I really loved you. I believe you. But love isn't enough when respect is missing, and you never really respected me. Not the way I deserved. I'm going to regret this for the rest of my life. Maybe. But that's not my burden to carry anymore. I stood up, left money for my coffee on the table, and walked out. Final update. It's been 3 months since that night. 3 months since I sent that message and walked away from a relationship that was slowly killing my self-worth. I moved into a new apartment last month. It's smaller than the place I had before, but it's mine. I'm not sharing space with someone who makes me feel like I need to apologize for existing. I heard through mutual friends that she's dating someone new, someone from her world, someone who plays golf and knows the right people and fits seamlessly into her family's events. I'm happy for her, genuinely. She found what she was looking for. I'm dating too, actually. Someone I met through work. She's from a similar background to mine. When I told her the story about being uninvited, she looked horrified. That's cruel, she said. Who does that to someone they supposedly love? Someone who doesn't actually know what love means, I said. Her family invited me to dinner last week. It was casual, warm, easy. Her dad asked about my work, actually listened to my answers, didn't make me feel like I needed to prove myself. Her mom made jokes that included me instead of at my expense. Afterward, my girlfriend asked if I was okay. Why wouldn't I be? I know meeting parents can be stressful, especially after, It wasn't stressful. It was nice. They were kind. They liked you. Good. I liked them too. She smiled, squeezed my hand. I'm glad. That's when I realized how simple it should have been all along. How relationships aren't supposed to be battles where you constantly fight for basic dignity. They're supposed to be partnerships where both people lift each other up. My ex tried to reach out one more time about a month ago. Long text about how she'd learned from her mistakes, how therapy was helping her see her patterns, how she hoped I was doing well. I responded, I'm glad you're working on yourself. I genuinely hope you find happiness. But I've moved on, and I need you to respect that. She replied, I understand. Thank you for everything, even for the hard lessons. I didn't respond after that. There was nothing left to say. Someone asked me recently if I regretted sending that message, if I thought it was too harsh, too public, too final. The answer is no, because that message wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about hurting anyone or causing drama. It was about finally standing up for myself, about refusing to accept being treated as less than, about drawing a line and saying, this far, no further. Could I have handled it differently? Probably. Could I have been more diplomatic, more private, more gentle? Sure. But I'd been gentle for 3 years. I'd been understanding and patient and accommodating. And where did it get me? Uninvited from a party because I made people uncomfortable by existing outside their narrow definition of acceptable. So I spoke up. I told the truth. And if that truth made people uncomfortable, well, maybe they needed to be uncomfortable. Maybe they needed to sit with that discomfort and think about why their actions had consequences. I'm 36 years old. I have a new apartment, a new relationship, and a renewed sense of what I will and won't accept from people who claim to care about me. The party didn't end the way anyone expected that night. Not because of what I said, but because saying it forced everyone to look at themselves honestly for the first time. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to accept anything less than the respect you deserve, even if it means walking away from someone you thought you'd spend your life with, especially then.
Hello. Her male best friend disrespected me in my own house, saying she'd be better off without you. When I shut him down in front of everyone, she snapped, "Apologize, or we're done." I just smiled and replied, "Then we're done, sweetheart." Neither of them had any idea what was about to happen next. My name is Sam. I am 33 and I work as a plumber in Nashville. Most of my days start early because service calls tend to pile up before noon. Some days I am home by late afternoon. Other days I am fixing a broken pipe at 9 at night. I own a small 2-story townhouse on the east side of the city. It is not fancy, but I bought it myself after years of long hours and weekend jobs. My girlfriend is Mila. She is 29 and works as a florist at a boutique flower shop downtown. We had been together a little over 2 years when this happened. Mila moved into my place about 8 months earlier after the rent at her old apartment went up and the building was being renovated. Our routine was pretty simple. I handled the mortgage, utilities, and the general upkeep of the house. She paid for groceries and smaller shared expenses. Most nights we had dinner together unless I was stuck finishing an emergency plumbing call somewhere across town. Mila had a male best friend named Paul who had been around long before I met her. From what she told me, they met in college and stayed close after graduation. I never had a problem with that idea. Adults have long-term friendships, and I am not the type to compete with someone who existed before the relationship. But Paul was around more than I expected. Sometimes Mila invited him over. Other times he would text her and show up later that evening. From the start, he treated my house like it was just an extension of Mila rather than a place I paid for. Shoes on the couch, helping himself to whatever was in the fridge. Loud opinions about things that had nothing to do with him. At first, I kept everything polite. He was technically a guest, and I do not enjoy pointless arguments. Still, there was always something under the surface with him. Small comments about how Mila deserved someone more exciting. Little jokes about how plumbing sounded like a boring life. Nothing big enough to explode into a fight. Just constant little digs. Whenever it happened, Mila would laugh and say that Paul had a sarcastic sense of humor. About 3 weeks ago, we had a small dinner at my place. Nothing complicated. A few friends, takeout food, and a couple bottles of wine. Paul was there, of course. About an hour into the evening, the conversation drifted toward relationships and long-term plans. Paul looked at Mila, then at me, and casually said that she would be better off without me. The room went quiet in the exact way it does when someone crosses a line but pretends they did not. For a few seconds, nobody said anything. One of Mila's friends looked down at her glass. Another guy coughed and pretended to focus on his phone. Everyone in the room clearly understood that Paul had just stepped over a line. Paul, on the other hand, leaned back in his chair like he had said something completely normal. Mila gave a short laugh that sounded more nervous than amused. I remember setting my glass down on the table and looking directly at him. I asked him to repeat what he just said. He shrugged and smiled in that casual way people use when they want to pretend they are joking after saying something serious. He said relax, it was just an opinion. Then he added that Mila was smart, social, and full of energy while I spent most of my time crawling under sinks and fixing toilets. He said it like it was a harmless observation. At that point the room was completely silent. I asked him a simple question. I asked him why he thought it was appropriate to insult me in my own house. He rolled his eyes and said I was being sensitive. Then he said the sentence that really settled things for me. He said that if Mila had listened to him earlier, she probably would have found someone better already. That was when I stood up. Not aggressively. Not yelling. I just stood up from the table and looked at him for a moment. Then I told him something very clearly. I told him that he was a guest in my home, and he was done talking like that. I told him if he had an issue with me, he could keep it to himself, or he could leave. Paul laughed. Actually laughed. He leaned forward and said something about how I could not tell him what to say around Mila. That was when Mila suddenly stood up too. She looked irritated. Not at Paul. At me. Her voice got sharp in a way I had not heard before. She said I was embarrassing her by making a scene over something that was obviously a joke. Then she said I needed to apologize to Paul so everyone could relax and enjoy the evening. The entire table was staring at us. I remember looking at Mila for a few seconds because I honestly thought I misheard her. So I asked her to repeat that. She crossed her arms and said it again, louder this time. She said I needed to apologize to Paul for overreacting. Then she added one more sentence. She said if I refused to apologize, then we were done. That was the moment the whole situation became very simple for me. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue with Mila, and I did not insult Paul. I just looked around the table for a second and realized the evening was already over whether anyone admitted it or not. So I made a simple decision. I told everyone that dinner was finished and it was time for them to head out. At first nobody moved. One of Mila's friends asked if I was serious. I told her yes. Very calmly. I said I was not interested in hosting people in my house, while being told I needed to apologize for being insulted in my own living room. That seemed to break the tension. Chairs started sliding back. Someone grabbed their jacket. Another friend muttered something about the night getting awkward. Paul stayed seated. He leaned back in the chair again and gave me this smug half-smile like he thought the whole thing was some kind of performance. He asked if I was really kicking everyone out because of one comment. I told him I was asking everyone to leave because the evening was over. Then I looked directly at him and added that he should probably be the first one out the door. That finally got him to stand up. He said something under his breath about how I clearly had anger issues. I ignored it and walked toward the front door. Within a couple of minutes, people were grabbing bags, saying quick, awkward goodbyes, and stepping out onto the porch. The whole group cleared out faster than I expected. Paul was the last one walking down the front steps. Before he left, he turned back toward the doorway and shook his head like he was disappointed in me. He said Mila deserved better than someone who acted like this. I did not respond. I simply closed the door. The house got quiet immediately after. When I turned around, Mila was still standing near the dining table with her arms crossed. She looked furious. Not embarrassed. Not uncomfortable. Furious. The first thing she said was that I had just humiliated her in front of her friends. Then she asked me what the hell I thought I was doing. I told her exactly what I was doing. I was removing people who disrespected me from my house. She scoffed and said Paul had not disrespected me. She said he had only told the truth. That was when I realized the dinner had never actually been about Paul. Mila kept standing near the table, waiting for me to argue with her. But I did not feel like arguing anymore. Something about the way she said Paul was just telling the truth made the whole situation very clear in my head. I looked at her for a moment and then simply nodded. I told her all right. She looked confused by that. Then I walked past her and headed upstairs. At first, she did not follow me. I could hear her moving around the kitchen like she was expecting me to come back down and continue the argument. Instead, I walked straight into the bedroom and opened the closet. About half of the space was hers now. Dresses, jackets, shoes lined up along the bottom shelf. I grabbed the first empty laundry basket I could find and started putting her things inside. Nothing aggressive. I was careful with everything. Folded clothes. Shoes placed on top. A couple minutes later, Mila came upstairs. She stopped in the doorway and just stared at me. She asked what I was doing. I told her I was packing her things. At first, she laughed like she thought I was trying to scare her. Then she realized I was serious. Her tone changed immediately. She said I was being dramatic and needed to calm down. I kept folding clothes and placing them into the basket. I told her she gave me two options earlier. Apologize to Paul or the relationship was over. She opened her mouth like she was about to argue, but stopped. Then she said that was not what she meant. I shook my head. I told her that was exactly what she meant because she said it very clearly in front of 6 people. She walked into the room and asked if I was really ending a 2-year relationship over one stupid dinner argument. I told her no. I was ending it because she demanded I apologize to a guy who insulted me in my own house, and then said he was right. That was when she got angry again. She said Paul was only trying to look out for her. She said sometimes people outside the relationship can see problems more clearly. I placed another stack of her clothes into the basket and looked at her. I told her if Paul cared that much about her living situation, then she was welcome to go stay with him. That was when she realized I was not bluffing. For a few seconds, Mila just stood there staring at the laundry basket in my hands. I could see the moment it finally registered that I was not trying to scare her, and I was not bluffing. Her voice shifted from angry to shocked. She asked if I was seriously throwing her out of the house. I reminded her that the house belonged to me and that she had already made it clear the relationship was over if I did not apologize. She said that was not how she meant it. I told her those were still the words she chose. She started pacing around the bedroom like she was trying to figure out how the situation had turned around on her so quickly. Then she said something that honestly surprised me. She said I was choosing my ego over our relationship. I placed another folded stack of her clothes into the basket and told her that was not what was happening. What was happening was that she had chosen Paul over basic respect. She immediately pushed back on that and said Paul had done nothing wrong. According to her, he was just being honest, and I should have handled it like an adult instead of kicking everyone out. That was when I stopped packing for a second and looked at her. I asked her a very simple question. If one of my friends had come into our house and told her she would be better off without me, would she have laughed it off? She did not answer. Instead, she said I was twisting the situation. So I went back to packing. Within about 10 minutes, I had 2 baskets and 1 small suitcase filled with most of the things she used daily. Clothes, shoes, makeup bag from the bathroom. Mila followed me downstairs while continuing to argue. She kept saying I was overreacting and that normal couples work through disagreements. I set the baskets near the front door and grabbed her suitcase. Then I opened the door. The night air outside was quiet, and the streetlights were already on. When I turned back toward her, she looked genuinely stunned. She asked me where exactly she was supposed to go. I shrugged and reminded her that Paul seemed very confident about what was best for her. So he was probably a good place to start. For a moment, Mila did not move. She stood in the middle of the living room looking at the open front door, then back at the baskets sitting on the floor. I could see the argument forming in her head again, but something about the situation had clearly shifted. The confidence she had earlier during dinner was gone. Now she looked uncertain. She asked me if I was really going to make her leave in the middle of the night. I told her it was barely past 9 and Nashville was not exactly shutting down for the evening. Then I added that she had plenty of options. Friends, co-workers, and of course Paul. The moment I said his name, her expression tightened. She said I was being petty by bringing him into it. I reminded her that he had already inserted himself into the situation earlier that night. For a few seconds, she just stood there staring at me like she expected me to suddenly change my mind. When that did not happen, she walked over to the door and looked down at the baskets. She picked one up slowly. Then she grabbed the suitcase handle. Before stepping outside, she turned back toward me. Her voice had lost most of the anger now and sounded more defensive than anything else. She said I was going to regret this once I cooled down. According to her, I was letting one stupid comment ruin everything we had built over 2 years. I leaned against the wall near the doorway and shook my head. I told her the relationship ended the moment she demanded I apologize to someone who insulted me in my own home. She stared at me for another second, like she was waiting for some kind of emotional reaction. But there really was not one. I had already made the decision upstairs. Finally, she stepped out onto the porch. She carried one basket to the sidewalk and then came back for the second. The suitcase rolled behind her as she walked down the short path toward the street. She never looked back again after that. About 30 seconds later, headlights appeared at the end of the block. A car slowed down and pulled up next to her. I watched from the doorway as she loaded her things into the back seat and climbed in. Then the car drove away. The house became completely quiet again. After the car disappeared down the street, I closed the front door and locked it. The house felt strange for a minute. Not sad, just quiet in a way it had not been in a while. Dinner plates were still sitting on the table, and a couple half-empty glasses were next to the sink. The evening had ended so abruptly that nobody bothered cleaning anything. I walked around the house for a few minutes, turning off lights and picking up small things people had left behind. Then I sat down on the couch. About 5 minutes later, my phone started buzzing. Mila, I watched it ring without answering. It stopped. Then it rang again. I let that one go too. After the third call, I finally picked up the phone and opened the message notifications. The first message was short. She said I needed to stop being ridiculous and answer the phone so we could talk like adults. The second message said she was staying at a friend's place for the night and expected us to work things out in the morning. The third message was longer. She wrote that I had overreacted because I felt embarrassed in front of everyone. According to her, Paul only said what many people were probably thinking anyway. I read that message twice. Not because it hurt, because it confirmed exactly what I needed to know. There was no apology in anything she sent. No acknowledgement that Paul crossed a line. Just more explanations about why I was wrong. So I made another simple decision. First, I opened her contact and blocked the number. Then I opened my social apps and removed her there too. It took less than 30 seconds. I did not do it out of anger. Honestly, the whole thing felt more like closing a door that had already been halfway shut for a while. Once it was done, I set the phone on the table and went back to cleaning up the kitchen. About an hour later, my phone buzzed again. It said, "Sam, we need to talk." No greeting. No explanation. Just that. I did not need to guess who it was. Nobody else would suddenly text me from an unknown number right after Mila got blocked. Paul. I set the phone down on the counter and finished rinsing a couple plates before picking it up again. 2 more messages had already arrived. The second one said kicking Mila out like that was messed up. The third one said I needed to call him so we could fix the situation. That one actually made me laugh a little. Fix the situation. The guy who insulted me in my own house now wanted to mediate the problem he helped create. I typed one short reply. I told him there was nothing to fix. About 10 seconds later, the phone rang. Same unknown number. I declined the call. Immediately, another message popped up. He asked what my problem was and said I needed to stop acting like a child. Then he said Mila was really upset and that I needed to think about what I was doing. I read the message once and then locked the phone again. But Paul kept going. Another message came through. He said if I had any respect for Mila, I would at least talk to him like a man instead of hiding behind blocked numbers. I ignored that one. A few minutes passed, and I went back to cleaning the kitchen. Then my phone rang again. Different number. When I answered, Mila was on the line. She sounded nothing like she did earlier that night. Her voice was shaky and rushed. The first thing she said was that Paul had kicked her out of his apartment. Apparently, she showed up there expecting him to help her for the night. Instead, they argued. According to her, he said the whole situation was now her problem and he did not want drama at his place. After that, he told her she needed to leave. She said she ended up standing outside with her bags and nowhere to go. Then her tone completely changed. She started begging. She said she was sorry about everything that happened at dinner. She said she should have defended me instead of backing Paul. She kept repeating that she made a mistake and asked if she could come back so we could talk. By the end of the call, she was practically pleading with me to forgive her. For a few seconds, I did not say anything. Mila kept talking on the other end of the phone, her voice rushed and desperate now. It sounded completely different from the confident tone she had earlier that night when she demanded I apologize to Paul. She kept repeating that she made a mistake. She said she should never have defended him. She said she did not realize how serious the situation was until he told her to leave his apartment. Then she asked again if she could come back to the house so we could fix things. I leaned back against the kitchen counter and let her finish. When she finally stopped talking, I answered as calmly as I had the entire evening. I told her I was not angry anymore. That part was actually true. But I also told her the situation had already passed the point where an apology could reset everything. There was a long pause on the line after that. Then she asked quietly if I was really refusing to let her come back. I told her yes. Not because she had one argument with me, but because she showed me exactly where I stood when Paul disrespected me and she chose his side in front of everyone. She tried to interrupt me and started apologizing again. I let her finish. Then I gave her a practical suggestion. I reminded her that her parents lived about 30 minutes outside Nashville. I also mentioned that her older sister had an apartment across town. Either of those places made more sense than coming back to my house. She went silent for a few seconds after that. Then she asked if I was seriously ending everything over this. I told her she already ended it earlier that night when she gave me the ultimatum. Another long pause followed. Finally, she started begging again. At that point, I knew the conversation was going nowhere. So I told her I hoped she got somewhere safe for the night. Then I hung up. After that, I opened the contact and blocked that number too. It was the third number blocked that night. Once it was done, the phone finally stopped ringing. After I blocked the last number, the house finally stayed quiet. No more calls. No more messages. No more people trying to explain why the situation I watched unfold in my own living room somehow was not what I thought it was. I finished cleaning the kitchen and put the last glass in the dishwasher. The dining table was empty again. About 2 hours earlier, that same table had 6 people sitting around it eating takeout and talking about random things. Now the house felt completely still. But honestly, it did not feel bad. Just calm. I sat on the couch for a while and thought about the entire night from the beginning. The part that stood out the most was not actually what Paul said. People say stupid things all the time. What mattered was what Mila did immediately after. She did not shut him down. She did not tell him he crossed a line. Instead, she looked straight at me and demanded I apologize to him in my own house. That moment told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in that relationship. After that realization, the rest of the night was just logistics. Asking people to leave. Packing her things. Closing the door. Blocking numbers. None of it required anger. Just decisions. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. For a second, I expected to hear someone moving around in the kitchen the way Mila usually did before work. Instead, the house was quiet again. I made coffee, checked my phone, and saw there were no new messages. Apparently, the message had finally gotten through. Later that day, I changed the lock on the front door. Not because I expected Mila to come back, but because it made sense to fully close the situation. 2 years of a relationship ended in about 3 hours. And the strange part is that once it was over, the entire thing suddenly felt very simple. Bye-bye.